Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, Vincent LaRussa and I are going to take a look back at the year 2022. We'll talk all about the concerts, the high points, the low points of the year, and much more. Of course, there's a lot of Kiss talk involved as well. Vincent and I also took a look back at our first episode from this year, and we looked at what some of our wish list items were and which ones came true and which ones ended up not happening. I think the episode was a lot of fun. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. So let's jump in, let's get started, and happy holidays, everybody. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm excited to have back with me
Yeah.
my buddy,
Hello.
my comrade,
Hola.
my partner in crime,
¿Cómo estás?
Vincent LaRussa. How you doing,
Hey,
buddy?
how's it going?
I was wondering
Good.
how many more languages could have you kept going in?
Thank God you stopped. That's all I'll say. I am not
Like,
fluent.
Who's going to run out of things first, me or you?
I could barely speak English. Come on.
Oh man, well, you're better than me at least with the English language.
That's been proven more than once.
Starzo.
Yeah, Starzo.
Oh man. So we wanted to get together today to kind of reminisce about 2022. The year's coming to an end, right? I've done close to 60 episodes. You've probably been on close to half of them during the year.
Really? Has it been that much?
Yeah, I did six. I think it was like 58 or 59. I think this will be the 58th or 59th episode of the year for me. So,
Awesome. Great job.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you very much. Oh man, what's interesting is I couldn't hear you clap. We were doing some things beforehand before we started recording, and I could hear you loud and clear, but I couldn't hear the clap. So maybe I'll just have to put a sound effect in there.
Please do that.
Okay, yes, because we have to have the clapping for me.
And please use the Woodstock 69 crowd. Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay, yes, absolutely.
Wasn't that the thing like in Kiss Alive, first Kiss Alive, they used like Eddie Kramer used like Jimmy at Monterey or something like that. Like
I know
like
use the fake crowd noise.
You know, like that one where they're doing the Aussie clap.
Right before I think rock bottom, right? There's like yep.
I think supposedly, Anywho.
Interesting. Well, it's funny. Before we decided to do this, I went back, and I don't know if you'll remember this, the first episode that we did this year, and it's the reason I mentioned all the episodes we did. The first episode was our 2022 wish list.
Oh,
so
I remember it now.
Yeah, well, I didn't tell you to go back and watch it because I like these things to be spurred.
Well, you didn't even tell me what we're doing. Now this sounds like I have no
idea.
I
just texted you. I said, "Do you want to just talk about 2022? There's some Kiss stuff here we can talk about." You're like, "All right, sounds good." I was like, "When you want to do it?" You're like, "Right now." I'm like, "It's good, okay."
Well, no, you're not telling the whole story. Okay, I didn't answer you for like 7 hours.
It was like 6-7 hours until from the time I texted you till the time you responded. Then you're like, "All right, let's do it right now as I'm eating my dinner." I'm like, "Okay, that's nice." But so as always, we don't prepare beforehand. We had said we were going to talk about the year in review of Boo Boo Boo, but one of the things I thought was interesting, because I did go back and watch our 2022 wish list, and I kind of forgot about this because it seems like in some ways just yesterday, but it seems like a lifetime ago also. When we did our 2022 wish list, we were doing a lot of talking about, will concerts even take place? Kiss was scheduled to go to Australia. Will that happen? COVID, was running rampant right around the holiday time period. I was still recovering from COVID. It was the first episode I had done after I had COVID.
You ruined my holidays. Yeah,
I
I
ruined
remember.
your holidays. Right, that part you remember exactly. So it's
Yeah.
interesting, kind of going back and hearing that, and then thinking about what actually happened in 2022. And you and I went to, I think, a few different shows together during the year. And yeah, I know I went to a few even on my own. Thinking back to earlier in the year, you and I went to see Ringo Starr together with Super M. So hey, Super M, I know you're always watching. So hey,
Oh
Super
yeah.
M, that was
Hola.
there we go again. So
Yeah.
Ringo was a fun night. You and I went to see the Who, boo boo boo. So
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
brought up a couple of times, but I began to realize that this was a year for me of kind of checking some artists off that I had never seen before. Ringo, the Who, Blondie, Pat Benatar. I'd never seen any of them in concert before. So I think having coming off the whole 2020, 2021 experience and no concerts and COVID and all of that, I had to make sure I checked those boxes. But I was just reminiscing a little bit about some of those good times we had at some concerts earlier this year.
Yeah, the fact that you bring it up made me realize in a relatively short, I know it's a year, short period of time, we really went from one state to the other,
Agreed.
I wouldn't even really have thought of any of that, that we were able to do, and you were able to do those activities and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
pretty damn cool.
And that's why I wanted to start there with the conversation, because yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago, like I said, but we really have come a long way in terms of just the last year and being able to do all of these things. And when we went to see the Who, that was at the Garden, right? If I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. And there's whatever 18,000 people there, and I never thought twice about it. So it's kind of nice that we've kind of, I say, come out the back end of that. I mean, I went to see Motley Crue and Poison and Def Leppard and Joan Jett, 60,000 people in a stadium. Now, yes, it was outdoors, but it was still 60,000 people.
And I think the really good thing about it is, especially now, once again, with flu season and whatnot. I mean, I just recovered a 2-week plus, well, there's a sinus infection. Who the hell knows what I had,
Yep.
I mean, I did test for COVID, for whatever that means, was negative, but a lot of people are still getting sick. A lot of people are still going. I mean, a lot of people I know just got COVID, but at least we're able to get past it. It's no worse than, as they say, I call it cold vid,
Right, exactly.
It's just like a bad cold or whatever. So it's not like it's gone out of our conscious or subconscious or whatever conscious we have, it's still a part of our day-to-day life, but at least the threat of it is not anywhere near the way it was, and the fear that we were living in, which is never fun,
No.
So
I mean, I think when I was looking back on my year, I think I've been to like 15 some odd concerts this year. So, clearly for me, life returned back to normal, so that was nice. And, speaking of, go ahead, you first.
And you went on a cruise too. And you went on the
And
cruise
I went on the
too.
Kiss cruise. Exactly. So, to me, it was a full year, to say the least. I think one of the things is I was thinking of all the different concerts I went to, and I don't even know if you and I have actually spoke about this, but, I did see Pat Benatar, I think it was late June time period. And ever since then, I have to say, if I look back on 2022 was the year of Pat Benatar for me, where I've kind of almost like refound her catalog, so to speak. And I'm going to say probably the songs I've listened to most this year, believe it or not, were Pat Benatar songs.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I've been, I've been running and gearing up to do a 10K in a couple of weeks. And I always been starting my runs listening to No You Don't, the Ooh song. I've listened to that nonstop. Hell's for Children. I mean, just Promises in the Dark. I mean, I've always liked her. I had some of her albums in the 80s, but I've seen her that night, and her voice is still just absolutely phenomenal. And now listening to these songs back, I'm like, damn, I kind of like refound it again after all of these years. I've always liked her. I have the jukebox behind me. I have a couple of her singles in there, but it's kind of been exciting to almost like refine that catalog again.
Now, I gotta ask you, did you ever listen to the album Wide Awake in Dreamland?
I don't think that's one I had. No.
You should really listen to that album. It's a underrated album. It came out in '88 at the height of when we were listening to all the metal stuff. It has nothing to do with that, but really, it's a really especially the first side of that record. I'm looking at the record again. And I think it's a great record, and not many people talk about it. So yeah,
now,
you should check it out.
Is that like poppy songs? Because I don't mind her poppy stuff. I like her rock stuff. I like the poppy stuff. Is it poppy, or is it more like her early rock stuff?
It's kind of a mix. The first the first track on there, All Fired Up, is a straight ahead up tempo rocker. You might have heard
I know
it.
that's
Yeah,
of course, yeah.
And it's got a couple like little.
That's been on my rotation for the last few months.
So that first, I'm looking at that first side, especially. I'm not looking at the second side. I don't really, just looking at the titles, don't remember as well. But it's a nice mix and it's a great sound, and it's a underappreciated record in my opinion.
All right, I'll have to go back and give that a listen. I think back to that concert and she opens up with "No You Don't," and if I'm assuming you know that song, right?
I've seen him at least twice, maybe 3 times in concert. Yeah.
Well, it just amazed me because as you know, it starts with a musical part, and then the music drops out, and she's just singing. And I remember being in the club there, and she's just singing. I'm like, I was blown away with just how incredible her voice sounded, and I really became a great appreciation. In fact, I'm going to say she's definitely entered my top 5 female singers. She might even be top 3 at this point, because I'm like, that night, I'm like, damn, she's got a great voice.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but when I was very young, that was like my first. Well, besides the Farrah Fawcett poster, which every male had, probably around our age or older even.
Except I had Carol Alt, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I'm talking, the
before that.
Yeah, the 70s, that 77. But I remember there's a picture somewhere where, it's a horrible picture. I'm wearing like a freaking burgundy sweater with like these horrible jeans and white socks. But there's a Pat Benatar pin on my
really?
It's about like 81, 82. So she was like my first crush. Like a lot of guys love Stevie Nicks or whatever. But I was totally into her at 10, 11, 12 years old.
Interesting. I did not.
Yeah.
And then we'll move off Pat Benatar in a minute. But what did you think when she turned poppy? Whether it was "Love Is a Battlefield" or, like I said, the "Ooh Ooh" song, which had definitely poppy elements.
Because every one of those songs didn't sound like something she did before. And it's kind of like what Madonna did, where she tried on every record to sound a bit different or reinvent herself.
Yep.
Pat Benatar minus rolling in a wedding dress on the ground at an award show,
Right.
or whatever it was. But yeah, I loved all her stuff, and I remember specifically she had that album True Blue. I think it's called True Blue.
Madonna did. Yep.
I'm sorry, that's where I'm getting confused.
Yes.
Pat Benatar came out with a blues album in around 90 or 91. It was she did all like blues standards. And if you'd like that kind of thing, she did an incredible job. And I went to go see her at the Beacon Theater, and everybody was waiting. All right, when are we going to hear, Promises in the Dark, or when are we going to? And she literally that whole night, and I knew it because she came out, guy playing stand-up bass. I knew it was not her band. And I remember who I went with. It's like, you ain't doing any of those songs tonight. And you heard people like, oh, they were moaning and groaning, but it was, I would say, a bit ballsy to do that. Gotta say, I think it had to be like 90. I think when that record came out. And let me get the name of the album correct. Yeah. True Love.
True Love. Okay, not True Blue. You said True Blue, which is
I was album. Close, yeah, yes, but I was talking about True Love. It actually came out in 91. It's a really, really, I think, and especially if you love the blues, right. And they both had an affinity for the blues. When I say both, her and Neil. Yep. And so if you like that kind of thing, check it out. It's really, really good.
I would definitely check that out. Yeah.
She rolled the dice and said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do." I give her a lot of credit for that.
And it's interesting that you say that, because when I saw her, she did not do, and I knew this going in, she did not perform that night, "Hit Me With Your Best Shot," which I know she hasn't been doing this year at all. And I don't even want to get into the reasons why. It's a little silly to me, but whatever. But you know how I've complained about when I saw The Who when they didn't do certain songs? I walked out of that Pat Benatar concert and I didn't care not one bit that she didn't do "Hit Me With Your Best Shot." It's just funny how I had that different experience with The Who. It was like, they were missing some of their biggest hits and she didn't play her biggest hit, and it didn't matter because that's just how blown away I was at that concert that night.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know and we could get it. I said we could get into the whole hit because I heard her at a couple of concerts with her moan and groan right before she went to do the song. Yeah. And, it is what it is. You know what I mean?
It is what it is. Yeah. But it didn't stop me from enjoying it. 1,000% over. And it was interesting because I think it was a few weeks later I saw Blondie, and I enjoyed Blondie, but nowhere near as much as Pat Benatar. And it was almost like the same effect when I saw Paul McCartney and then the Rolling Stones. I was blown away with, not this year, but there's like 4 or 5 years ago. I saw Paul McCartney. I was blown away, and I thought I was going to be blown away when I saw the Rolling Stones, and I wasn't. And I had that same thing. Like I was blown away with Pat Benatar. I was like, all right, now here comes Blondie. She's going to blow me away. And she was still great, and she was really good. But Pat Benatar was just on a whole nother level. So that was just...
Might just be that you like those songs better. I mean, well, you maybe never really thought about, like, do I like Blondie songs better? And then hearing both performances, hearing them live, just brought you closer to the Benatar's material,
Could be. That definitely could be. I mean, I did enjoy when I saw Blondie that Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols is on bass, and my daughter was like, will you stop saying it? You're the only person in this entire place that cares.
Yeah.
And I did all night long. I kept saying it, and I was like, she should mention that there's a Sex Pistol on the stage. My daughter's like, she's not going to because nobody cares but you. Like, okay. And she didn't mention it. They did do like a 10-second clip of God Save the Queen at the end of one of the songs, whatever, which was, I'm sure, a little nod to him. But I was probably the only one in that whole place that knew or cared why they were doing that. So
there might have been one other critter,
Yeah, maybe one or two others, but I'm sure most people probably by face 40 years later don't necessarily know who Glenn Matlock is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was, I mean, just some of the concerts I was thinking back to during the year. Now we're talking about like that May time period, June time period. That's when we saw the Who, right? And I've given my comments on that throughout the year on this. And I do regret, I told you this before, not seeing the opening act, which was the Wild Things, which was on the Kiss cruise, and they were phenomenal. So that is probably one of my biggest concert regrets of this year, is not seeing the opening act for the Who. Go figure.
Yeah, right.
But around that time, as you remember, is also when Creatures Fest took place. And I've actually thought about that one a lot in the last like 6 months. So here we are, we're 6 months out from that event. You obviously weren't there. I was. We did an episode on that. Any thoughts on that 6 months later and everything that went down that weekend, the whole Vinnie Vincent performance or non-performance or whatever?
I mean, I think we had a conversation about a week ago again, and I think the word you used was simply like opportunity missed or something like that. Absolutely. It could have been, I think and again, I wasn't there. I kind of lived that experience through you and everything else I saw on social media. But, I think just outside of looking in, I think honestly, people really want to see Vinnie with a full band drummer. I know he's super critical on drummers, and he favors the drum machine. But quite honestly, when you want to see a live band, you don't want to be hearing a drum machine. So it'd be nice in the upcoming year, and whatever he's going to be doing, that eventually you get to see a full, drums, bass, him on guitar, and whoever's singing, so.
Yeah, well, I wonder to that point, I wonder if he'll do any other public shows at this point, right? So he did that Creatures Fest thing, I think in January, February, but I think it's January. He's going back to do another one of those private shows. What do you think? Do you think he'll do any more public shows?
I think so. I mean, look, I think when Vinnie did a couple of the initial things, people were like, all right, he's gonna bail out of this. I mean, a certain thing about the performance themselves, like he might have promised a full band, but then it wasn't, or whatever. I'm not going to go into the particulars, but he hasn't canceled any events as far as I remember in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah,
he's pretty much and I know he has one. Doesn't he have one coming up in January?
I guess you weren't paying attention when I just said about 45 seconds ago that he has one in January or February.
All right. That's my ADD, right?
Okay, I'll let it slide.
You shouldn't pick on a handicapped person, okay?
Okay.
How you like that to make you feel guilty?
Gee, thanks. By the way, just for anybody watching, that's not an official diagnosis.
No, it's not.
Okay. I don't want people to think like, well, Mike's brutal, man. He thinks on his friend with that diagnosis.
Yeah. I don't know how that one flew over my head,
No, look, talking about Creatures Fest and Vinnie's performance specifically, I keep thinking, and you said missed opportunity. And look, I was at the event the year before, and he played to tracks, but he did 15 or 16 songs, and it felt like a concert format at least. And I keep thinking back to Creatures Fest, and having Bruce up there was cool, and having Ace up there was cool. It's something you're never going to see again. But I kind of feel like missed opportunity. Like if he would have done 12 songs and then brought those guys out, I would have been like, yeah, I still wish there was a live drummer there. But if he did like he did at the show the year before, the private show, I think people would have felt more satisfied. But I just keep thinking back to, man, what a missed opportunity. What a missed opportunity. And it's a shame. It's really a shame to me. But
but I think overall, from what you said and what gathered from people, I mean, overall people enjoyed the experience. They feel like they got their money's worth, right? I mean,
I think people who were there for the weekend definitely thought they got their money's worth.
That's what,
definitely. And you know, to me, I look back to that weekend. You know, let's think about it. Peter Criss played that weekend with Sister's Doll, a couple of songs. Then he played with Bruce Kulick a couple of songs, one song, Hooked on Rock and Roll. I got to see Peter Criss play drums with Ace Frehley on stage playing guitar. That's a win. It's a win in my book, you know? And that, in fact, that's one of the things I thought about with 2022. And I'm thinking of Kiss. I think to me, the big story of the year was Peter Criss returning, you know? And we went to New York. We saw him with Sister's Doll, right? And you finally partly checked that off the list where I can't make fun of you anymore for not having gone, whatever it was, 2016 or 17. So, you know, thinking back to that, what were your thoughts of finally getting to see Peter Criss after all these years?
Well, I mean, look, anytime our heroes, and I'm talking about, let's just talk in the Kiss, because mostly we talk Kiss, right?
Yep.
Anytime we have an opportunity to see them once again grace the stage, whether he's behind the kit or singing, and that's in this case he didn't play drums, right? He just sang.
Not when we sang it, sorry, New York.
It's great to see, especially with such a young band that he's supporting. You know, that's really cool. You know, it's not like he's coming up with Aerosmith or he's going on the stage with, you know, I'm not saying Sister Doll's a no name, but I mean, you know, but let's face fact, they're not a big name band.
No,
they're doing really well for themselves, and I think they're on the rise for sure.
Yep.
So I think it's really great. I mean, I think, you know, one of the great things about the world we live in, it's like you could look at it two different things with social media and phones and the stuff, and like how we grew up, we didn't have that stuff. But a part of our childhood, I would never give up for not, you know, or to have those devices or whatever, because we were much more creative in what we could do with our time, and the social connection we had with each other, I think, was just that much better. But the fact that, you know, we can have these opportunities to see people who are so heavily influential on our lives in different situations other than the bands they played in, the types of events they have, the Creatures Fest, the Sisters Doll show, you know, I mean, the conventions. I mean, I even just saw in the last couple of days for Peter's birthday, you know, people who were in the know of, people I'm Facebook friends with. And I was thinking, why weren't you there? I'm like thinking, like, how are you not involved in this stuff? Like, because
I'll say this: the people who are there are people who work with him at these events. So that's where that connection is. It's not like he's just randomly picking, you know, 5 or 7 fans. You know,
I know that, but these are like when you say work with them, this was not like working with the big Kiss machine where back in the day, you know, these are fans who just were able to get connected with. You know, the Aces and the Peters and the Jeans or whatever through events like this. And, you know, so that's the great part of the social media thing, that the artists have let down their guard to get the common man or woman to get close to them. And I think it's a wonderful thing to see, you know.
Agreed.
I mean, our good friend Jason Herndon, you know, someone who you've had on the podcast, and made me very merry to see him standing there next to Pete. You know, it's like it's a really cool thing, you know.
It is.
I was jealous as all hell. Don't get me wrong.
Of course, who wouldn't be, right? Who wouldn't be? I mean, it's good for him because he's a great guy, and all the people I know that are there are great people. But of course, somebody sees that and there's happy for them, jealous for yourself. I think that's normal, you know.
I mean, look. We've talked about it, maybe not in a while. That Kiss tour with Peter on the bus for whatever it was, 3-4 hours. I don't remember how long it was. And we went to Electric Ladyland, and we went to where what was the loft was, and where they took the picture of Address to Kill.
We stood outside Madison Square Garden singing Beth with him, and you and I sandwiched him coincidentally.
I mean, again, that was what I was leading to. How do we ever top that moment? I don't, unless he says, "Hey, you want to come over for London Brawl tomorrow night?" You know what I mean? Gigi's cooking.
What if it doesn't have Worcestershire sauce on it?
I'll make the exception without the
Okay.
Worcestershire sauce.
Okay.
But I mean, even that, like looking back, and that was what, 5 years ago, whatever
Yeah,
it
probably
was.
5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the main reasons why I did go to that show was like, oh, that's it. Nothing's
Yep.
ever gonna be better than this, you know.
That is
But
true. You did say that.
but I'm, so happy that we have these opportunities to do these things and to see um our idols, or whatever you want to use, whatever word, fill in the blank,
Yeah.
that have meant so much to us.
Yeah.
Um, which
And
is
I'll
great.
say that. Yeah, I'll say this. I had a few people tell me after Creatures Fest, and even that weekend while I was there, a couple of people told me that when Peter, after he performed with Ace, Peter was back in his hotel room with some people, just hanging out. And this blows my mind. He wouldn't look for any videos. He wanted to know when Mike Brunn was posting the video of him and Ace performing. Once that was up, that would be the first video he watched. And I had multiple people say that to me. And somebody else on the cruise came up to me and said, now that's months later, hey, Mike, do you know at Creatures Fest, Peter wouldn't watch any videos until he saw yours first? And it just blows my freaking mind.
I know. I mean, look, again.
Wait. Peter Criss even knows who Mike Brunn is? Are you freaking kidding me? Really?
Well, you're the king of not giving yourself any credit. I always say that. I mean, you have a great relationship with a lot of these guys, and Bruce, I know he's reached out to you, and you've established a nice relationship with him, and all the guys in Ace's band, Gene's band, whatever band it is now, Ace's band, like Spencer and Jeremy and Brent. I'm trying to remember all the names, but I'm sorry if I forgot anybody. The bass player is again Zach. Now, did I see a video when Paul was playing? Was that him playing lead guitar? Like,
yes, it was. Right?
Yeah, I was like, wait a second, what the hell? Which obviously shows how talented he is. But
I got to reach out to him because I'm thinking, all right, Gene, check, Ace, check, Paul, check, and he played with Peter at Creatures Fest. He's played with all 4 original members now.
Now, can we touch upon this Paul thing? I don't know if this was something that you were going to talk about, but can we quickly talk about this?
Go ahead, jump into it. Yeah.
So if anybody knows, and Paul, I guess it was for Criss Angel, it was some sort of benefit thing, and Paul Stanley came out and he did All Right Now, and I think Whole Lot of Love, correct?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And I was really, I hate to use the word surprised on how well, these are not easy songs to sing.
Yeah.
And in some ways I was like, it sounds like he's singing these, and I texted you, it sounds like he's singing these songs a little better even than the Kiss stuff. A little baffled by it, but hey, it is, it's great.
Especially A Whole Lot of Love. I mean, look, he did the opening of Whole Lot of Love, and it was okay. And then he kind of passed the baton over to Zach and let Zach, which was the smart thing for Paul to do.
Right, exactly.
But All Right Now, I thought he sounded pretty decent on.
Yeah.
But 2022.
Obviously, yes. Right. I mean, so all these guys have obviously, as they've lost steps, and it's just the nature of the age. Except if you're Roger Daltrey, which I know you always pick on that show, but I'll still never forget at 78, 79 years old, the guy's doing everything in original keys and sounding incredible, in my opinion. So
look, I might have criticized the set list, but I never once criticized the performance, right? Have you ever once heard me during the year say, gee, that performance wasn't good?
And I think somebody had told me recently, and I always thought, like, huge party band, even back in the day, and I know Keith was but I think somebody, when I mentioned that, they said, oh yeah, like back in the day, Roger would like go back to the hotel room and do whatever to rest his voice. And obviously whatever he did, because unless he's a freak of nature, he obviously did something,
whatever he did, he did something right.
Yeah. So anyways.
No, I agree. And like I said, for the record, I thought the Who did sound really good that night. So to your point, I think Roger Daltrey sounded amazing that night. But yeah, unfortunately, that Paul video, by the way, was pulled down. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. I went back to watch it for a second time last night, and it says the video's been made private.
Interesting. I'm gonna go check that. I'm not that I don't believe you, but
yeah.
Let's see. Video. Now it says, yep.
Interesting, right? I wonder what the story is behind that.
I don't know. Do you remember who posted it?
No, I don't. Not off the top of my head.
Oh.
So
okay.
just in case somebody's watching this and saying, "Oh, let me go check that out."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the video that's out
Sorry,
is now
sorry.
private. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry I mentioned it. I
No,
know,
no, I'm glad you
like,
did, because that's something that happened during the year and something that's recent. And I had this exact same reaction you did watching Paul sing those songs. Like, he sounds better on All Right Now than he does on Love Gun. That's for damn
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
The interesting thing, going back to the video wish list at the beginning of the year, one of the things you and I discussed back in January is the off the soundboard releases and what were we hoping for in 2022. And it was interesting because Kiss ended up releasing a show from 77, right? Des Moines. They released Donington from 96 and Virginia Beach from 04. I think you had mentioned the show from the 70s, so that that's no surprise there. Neither one of us had mentioned 96 or 04, but both of us had on our wish list, and I guess it partially came out, not through off the soundboard, but Creatures of the Night soundboard.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
We didn't get it off the soundboard, but we did get the Creatures box. So probably to me that's a win for us during the year.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know we already covered the box set. We went through it, so you could put the link down below if people want to see it again. But again, I think they did a tremendous job on that product.
Absolutely. And so to that, then recently this week, there was an audio leak of the 73 Nothing to Lose Bell Sound Studios, which of course instantly you texted me and I thought it as well. And a few people commented on Facebook. Well, this probably indicates that the next box set is for the first album. So what are your thoughts? Well, first, what did you think of that audio leak? Let's talk that first.
Well, I was driving, which is potentially dangerous, because as we said, I think we called it a 20-toe salute for this one. We gave an extra set of feet,
a whole extra set of feet. Exactly.
Yeah. No, listen, again, anytime we hear anything we've never heard before, especially from that time period, a different arrangement. One of the things I had told you when I called you immediately after I heard it was the two things that really strike me was Peter's drumming, which I thought was phenomenal. And again, I know I'll stick up for Peter for the rest of until my last gasp of breath.
Yeah.
Of how I really do believe he contributed mightily to the Kiss's sound. And his voice on that was great. And Gene's bass playing, again, so underrated, so melodic. I just loved it. I loved hearing it. It was much longer. So you got, what was it, a total of 7 minutes, or then it went into Love Theme from Kiss.
Right. Yep.
So it gives somebody obviously teasing a little bit more, like, oh yeah, there's this too.
Yep.
But it'd be interesting what they put out for that first album, because I mean, of all the albums, that's their most important, I mean, that's the first album. You could argue whether it's their best, and I know we've had that argument.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think one of my first 4 or 5 episodes that I ever did on the podcast, you and I debated the first Kiss album versus Hotter Than Hell. If you remember that, I mean, we're going back a few years ago now. And I think we both said, everybody says the production on Hotter Than Hell is muddy and a little weak. But I always say even that first album, just the tempos, that's why I call it Boring Gin. Like the tempos on that first album are just bad. I don't know how else to say it. Some of the songs, Firehouse drags, so hearing this version be so alive, Now I know that I believe they were just rehearsing it in a studio and hit record. And so it is live without an audience, but it just feels so alive. And the band just feels full of energy that almost like if I compared that to the version on the debut album. Now I love the version on the debut album with the piano in it, but man, this new version here that they had, which is similar to the live version that kind of leaked a few years ago, it's just freaking incredible. And like you said, Peter Criss, and we were talking before about Peter Criss returning to the stage this year, and it's like the year of Peter Criss for me. Just hearing this recording just solidified for me. I was listening to it again today, and I said, Peter might have been the best drummer in Kiss. And I know that a lot of people will disagree with that, but damn, the feel he has on these early songs, unlike anybody else.
I think I said this a long time ago. If you're right, I'm not trying to take away your thunder here. I remember saying specifically about how you and I both idolized Eric Carr in the 80s, and not to take anything away from Eric's playing, especially on Creatures, tremendous drumming on that. but I could name, right off the top of my head, whether it's Dr. Love, whether it's nothing, 100,000 Years, or I'd name a bevy of other tunes, where his feel, I mean, to me, I don't know another drummer putting him in that seat if there would have been that,
Agreed. Agreed.
I just love his sound, and I think you actually hear, in my opinion, and this is what struck me, in that Nothing to Lose, you hear spurts of little things that were extras. Yep. That to me I never heard on the record, where I said, wow, his ability was even greater. If you watch him on the Winterland show, or if you watch him on I think it was what was the 70, was it the 70 or 76 or the Destroyer, where Peter's in fucking beast mode.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, it's just incredible, his playing. Just utterly incredible to me. Now,
agree.
Again, people's gonna say, well, Neil Peart, okay, I'm not comparing it to that style of drumming.
It's a whole different style.
Just let's be very clear. One of the greatest drummers, arguably people say is what's his name from AC/DC, for God's sakes, I gotta remember his name. Nice
Rudd?
job, Vin. Phil Rudd, thank you.
I gave you 10 seconds. 5 seconds.
And it's just simple drums, but his feel makes AC/DC.
Well, Peter Criss would never fit in AC/DC. That's just not
absolutely
not the style.
Yeah, he again, we call it the swing, the sway, the this, the that.
Peter Criss would never be the right drummer for the Creatures of the Night album.
No. Although, funny you say that, and I'm not saying he would be. You had sent me a thing.
Danger. Yeah. Is that what you're thinking?
No,
I figured you were thinking the song "Danger" because I would love to hear Peter playing drums on something.
No, you had sent me a recording of him doing something with, I think it was a live show with Mark St. John.
Yes.
And it was an instrumental, and I listened to that and I was like, wow, his drumming is really, what was my comment I said to you? Oh, I said something else, but we won't go by that comment, what I said about the instrumental. Uh-huh. But yeah, no, his drumming was a little bit, it was kind of different from what you heard with Kiss. That's how it struck me to say, again,
I would not have known that was Peter Criss playing drums. It was so
exactly, and that's my point.
Different than what I'm used to from him playing. And this was 1990, that recording that you're talking about, which, if you want to go find it, it is on YouTube. It's Peter Criss. I think it might in the title say Mark St. John, it might say The Tree. But it's, from California in 1990, where him and Mark St. John, it's the only time they performed in public together. And they do an instrumental for like 10 minutes. Then Peter takes questions from the people who were there for like 20 minutes. And it's just a friggin' amazing recording. Like you said, again, Peter's drum in 1990. The one thing that I did think when I heard that, man, what a difference in his drumming from 1990 to 96.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that was because of his back and, some of the physical issues he had,
Yep.
And then, they're using triggers and stuff like that to compensate for, his not being able to dig in as much as he used to be able to. The technology had evolved too. But no, that's again, I could talk hours about Peter's drumming.
Absolutely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that to me, even Ace Frehley on that recording of Nothing to Lose is, and one of the things I thought of is I'm listening to this and I thought Ace was on fire. The whole band was on fire. And how many people say Kiss writes simple songs and, that anybody could play them. And I'm listening to that original recording of Nothing to Lose. And I'm like, that's not a simple arrangement that they've got going on there, at least not to me. Musically, it's very different. And it's almost like once they got the record contract, somebody said, all right, you guys are going to cut your songs down to 3.5 minutes and they're going to be radio friendly and they're going to be simple and they're going to, be something that's accessible to masses, because something like that is just so different to me than what Kiss ever became.
Well, let me just clarify something about the Kiss thing. When you have the opportunity to play in cover bands and you get to learn a lot of material, you get to see how the structure of the song is. And there are many, many songs that I cover, and more so recently, doing some stuff playing guitar, which is different from bass, obviously, although generally if you're playing an A note on the bass, you're playing an A chord on the guitar, whether it's A minor, A major, A minor, whatever the chord's going to be. But my point being, whether it's a Foreigner song, whether it's an REO Speedwagon song, whether it's a Styx song, and I'm just naming some of the artists that I'm covering, generally these songs are in your most basic chords, you know, and I just think that for whatever reason, Kiss, the fact with the makeup, the cartoon, or whatever, they were labeled more so than some of these other bands. And even though, like, it's a shame, like the REO Speedwagons and the Bostons and the Foreigners never even get to sniff the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because those bands are anywhere as good, in my opinion, of a lot of these people who got in, even this year. You know, I mean, how do you, and now I'm going on a fucking tangent about the Rock, because now it's getting me angry. But how do you have a band like
LaRussa?
How do you not have a band like Foreigner in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? You know, listen to what they produced from like 77 or whatever. I think it was 77 to about 85 or 86. Right. The amount of hits they had, you know, significant hits.
Yep.
You know, and, you know, huge hits. And the power that the songs still have today, you know, how good they and how much they've aged. But these bands, you know, they were labeled as that corporate rock bullshit. I hate that name, you know. It's a shame. But my point being is to what I just said earlier, and not to take away anything about these bands. What I'm just trying to say is, yes, they're not, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you know, Mahavishnu Orchestra.
You go listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Lake and Palmer, exactly.
You remember Stanley with that?
Do I remember? I only watched that video 728 times.
That's right.
Kiss Exposed. But a lot of these artists, you know, I mean, they use the fundamentals of blues rock. Kiss has said, we took this song, we took I Can't Explain, and I put the chords backwards, or you know, whatever. I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's I just that bothers me. It really, really bothers. It's the hooks and the attitude. You know, there's a reason why even a band. I'm sorry, I'm not even letting you speak.
That's okay. You're on a roll.
There's a band like Bad Company. You know, not the hugest. You know, they never got on the level of say an Aerosmith this far, but they were highly successful.
Yep.
But when you listen to Bad Company, there's an attitude, and it's raw. The guitars are raw. The drums are very straightforward, and you got Paul Rodgers' incredible vocals. That's what makes them like AC/DC. You got the power, the simplicity of the drumming. You got kick-ass riffs, guitars, and soloing, and you have whether it's Bon Scott. Or what was the second guy's name? Help me.
I'm not helping you this time.
George Jefferson.
Yes.
Brian Johnson.
Brian?
Yes.
Yeah. I like Brian
Johnson. Brian, yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you see, now when I talk about all this stuff, I want to go listen to all these records now. I'm getting excited about, you know, and then what's so wonderful about this music thing that we love so much and why we do this, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, but I think if I was going to summarize that entire rant, then you agree that Kiss songs are too simple?
No, I don't.
No. Obviously I
no.
didn't. Oh, man.
No, I don't.
But I want to make sure, since we were talking about the leak of the Nothing to Lose demo, that we also just acknowledged during the year all the Kiss video leaks that happened, right? Oh man, yeah. That was like what, June, July time period. And it was like, you know, we're in the holiday season now. It's like Christmas Day every day for Kiss fans, right? And you text me or I'll text you, did you see this? Did you see that? And we'd send links to each other. That was, you know, look, and we never adjusted on the podcast. On one hand, as a fan, I'm really excited that all that stuff leaked out and came out and we got to see that. On the other hand, if the stories that we've all heard are true, that was stolen from the band, and well, that's kind of not cool. I'm still glad we saw it, because I don't think the band would have ever released all of that stuff in a million years. But if it was stolen, it was not cool. But that doesn't take away the fact that every day waking up and there's 3 or 4 or 5 more clips out there, that it wasn't a really exciting summer to be a Kiss fan.
Oh, absolutely. It was like one day I went to the candy store, I bought Skittles. The next day I bought Snow Caps. Next day I bought Razzles. It's like every day it was like a new treat, you know. It was awesome. It really was. And, you know, I haven't been around in the circles as much as you of knowledge of a lot of this stuff that's been out, and I wasn't back in the day trading bootleg tapes and this and that, and
Right.
so even more so for me to see a lot of this stuff, it was really incredible, especially like because of that A&E special, and I think a lot of that's why this stuff came out. We had a glimpse of some of this stuff, that we hadn't seen before.
Absolutely.
So, and it just made you realize how much stuff is really out there that we never really realized Kiss had, and
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is just like you said, supposedly all the stuff that was, put into a file for the A&E special. I can guarantee you there's other stuff out there, audio and video, that Kiss did not either use in that, or they don't have and they don't own. It's just, you have to, sometimes I sit back and I wonder, is it ever going to end where we get these things? And, Nothing to Lose leaked yesterday. And I know if I think back a few years, people supposedly did have copies of that Bell Sound Studio demos, like the full recording, except for Nothing to Lose and Acrobat. Right. Those are the two songs that were missing from Trade in Circle, supposedly. Now, all of a sudden, those are the two songs that come out. It's just, when is it ever going to end? And I don't mean that like I wanted to, but,
well,
hopefully never.
one of the things I said to you, and I don't have one. Oh, I do have one local here. Let's see if I don't drop them. But in today's day and age, you could work on a project, have one of these things in your pocket, and when no one's looking, boom, in the computer, copy file. I mean, it's like a stick of gum.
Of course.
This is I firmly believe the reason why the videos and the stuff like that, because
Absolutely.
It's not like back in the day. Quick, grab a cassette, put it in the double cassette. Why is this thing?
Right.
Like it's hard to cover that up.
Yep. Look, I remember in '92, right, talking about how times are different. In '92, I was at a Kiss convention. 92. It was probably April of '92, the New Jersey Kiss convention, and Revenge wasn't out yet, but somebody had an advanced copy there, and they were playing it on cassette. Now, obviously, that's not something you could have copied cassettes, but you can't just go and put a drive like that into a computer and make a copy. I had my Walkman with me that day, and I kept it in my jacket and hit record. And I don't have the tape anymore, but when I went back home and listened to it, it was like, here's a jacket. But that was the way, that was the only resources I had to try to even get a copy 3 weeks before it was released. Now it's just so easy.
I was at that because I remember hearing every time I look at you, and I'm like, what the hell is this?
It's now, like you said, it's just so much easier. But definitely that was an exciting time during the summer. And there is still some stuff I think that seemed to be dripping out even now, 6 months later. But definitely an exciting 2022 to be a Kiss fan and getting all that classic era footage. Did you have a favorite? I know we never really addressed it on the podcast. Did you have a favorite of all of that stuff?
Wow. Trying to think back of all, because there was so many things. It was like getting bombarded.
Yeah. And like I said, you didn't know what I was going to ask you, so I gave you no time to even think about it.
I think some of the like, was it the 8mm stuff?
Yep.
was incredible to me, because to see it presented that way.
Yep.
I mean, I think that was some of my favorite stuff. Even if it was choppy and they took parts of this, parts of that.
Yep.
What was the outdoor show, that famous outdoor show that they did?
The St. Louis one from '74.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Because just to see Kiss outdoors in the '70s is,
of course.
It's when did you see other than Kiss Meets the Phantom?
Exactly. No, exactly. And this was in broad daylight in St. Louis.
And that's what looked really cool.
Yeah, to me, the Kobo 75. I know it's not the real sound in there, but it it's done so well it almost looks like it's the real sound. That was just incredible footage.
Yeah, absolutely
incredible. But no, that was exciting. Like I said before, I went back and I watched our wish list from 2022, and we'll maybe have to do one of those again for 2023. But it was interesting because when we recorded that, I had just interviewed Doc McGee like 6 weeks before that. And there was a lot of talk at that time that 2022 was going to be the end of the road and there was going to be an official announcement of a final show. Clearly that never happened this year. There was a lot of talk about rescheduling the Vegas shows for either August or October this year. Clearly that didn't happen. But what's funny is I watched it back, and when I interviewed Doc and he told me probably the final show was, he said, definitely 2022 is what he told me. And he said, probably New York and probably in the fall, like October, November. And I 100% believed it. And I said to you in our wish list, what do you think, Vin? You're like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I'm like, damn, I got suckered again. And you were right again. So you look back at 2022, and obviously they did a lot of shows overseas. And I'm happy for those fans that, like, whether it's Australia, Europe, that got to see them. Do you think it's ever going to end?
Yeah, it has to end, unfortunately. Well, and this, especially in this form of them with makeup and the whole thing. I mean, because there's going to be a certain point where it's going to be like utterly ridiculous, I think based on their age. Yep. I don't know, you can't stop the hands of time, unfortunately, but will it be 2023? I think if the world is in a normal way with, as far as we don't have any other pandemic type of, I hate that word.
Yes, I know.
I don't even, so strike that from the record.
Okay. Edit her out.
Yeah, edit her out. I think it could be very likely in the fall of 2023, not 2022.
Yeah. No,
and hopefully it will still be New York, and we have some sort of opportunity and to be there.
Yep. And we'll talk more about that on our 2023 wish list episode. But I think that you're probably going to end up being right, because, I did go on the Kiss cruise this year, and they announced originally that this was the final cruise. And then when you get on the boat, they announced, well, it's not really the final cruise. It's just the final time they're going to play in the inside theater with makeup. And it just makes me think that, all right, probably that means the plan right now is to have the final makeup show sometime this year, and that Kiss will go on non-makeup shows every now and then, maybe even makeup shows, who knows. But dare I get suckered in again, but I do believe this is going to be the end of the road, supposedly in 2023. Yeah. But you told me last year you don't believe it, so I should probably not get suckered in again.
No.
I will say this. I want to talk about this as well, and I want you to be as honest as, because this one you and I did briefly talk about the other day. So I want you to be as honest with me now as you were when we were on the phone. Another new Kiss product this year came out late in the year. Gene Simmons vodka. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I just think it's a bit hypocritical. Gene has been very much against drugs and alcohol for all these years, and to put out, maybe one thing, I know Kiss was putting out a product of alcohol. Right. They had, I think it was Cold Gin, right? They had the Kiss's Cold Gin.
I think so, yeah.
But for him, his money bag product, I think it's on his money bag thing. Like he had the soda, I don't know if he's still doing the soda. If you're really against something like that, he has so many ventures, and I've always not been one to jump on the Gene. Oh, he's greedy, Gene, greedy. You gotta make money. Let him make as much money as he wants. You created something that nobody ever else did in this band, or helped create it. Live your life to the fullest until you're not here anymore. I never would take that away from anybody. Play as long as you can play on the stage.
Yep.
I don't take that away. But in this particular case, it just didn't really sit well with me. I just don't think he needed to put this out. I just don't think it's just sends a very insincere message to what he's always said. And we know Kiss has flip-flopped all the time about a lot of things.
Yes.
Whether it's their own members. You know what I mean? Yep. I mean, you just saw, I'm sure you saw, Paul had a very nice message about Peter's birthday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then, a week from now, we're going to hear some stupid shit probably that we don't want to hear.
Probably,
We heard something recent, I think, about Vinnie Vincent, and Gene Simmons made a comment about him and his soloing. I'm like, come on.
Yep.
Enough. I really, whether you believe, I just don't want to hear it anymore. That's
Agreed.
me. That's me.
I agree.
I agree. So, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. To me, it feels like it's a money grab. And I know all of these things, so many fans say it is, but this one just reeks of, I know I can make money from this. Now, I'll say, and you said this also when we spoke beforehand, the bottle is cool looking.
Absolutely.
Really freaking awesome looking. But does Gene Simmons, who's been so outspoken about alcohol, need to sell alcohol? It just, I don't know. Something just doesn't feel right about that to me. I'm not saying that people shouldn't drink alcohol. I drink sometimes, but it just, when your platform has been your anti-alcohol for your entire life. But look, Gene, and I told you this, Gene was selling marijuana a few years ago, and he was on a board of a company that sold marijuana, whatever it is. So it's all about the money, I guess, more than anything. But when he's preached this for decades, it just seems a little odd now that all of a sudden he's selling alcohol.
Here's my feeling on that. I know, like, you can't advertise cigarettes and stuff like that anymore. Leave it up to the major alcohol companies, whatever, beer, to sell their product.
Yep.
To me, when you're like what Gene has been, the fact that you don't need this product, I find it hurtful for families who have been affected by alcoholism. And I don't want to be all preachy here,
right?
But this is where I feel like it could be avoided. People have died drunk driving because of alcoholism. To me, it's just an arena. Like, you don't need this part of your business.
Agreed.
Just leave it.
Well, I thought this. How do you think he would have reacted if Ace Frehley started selling liquor?
Oh, of course. Well, that's great. That was great.
How would he react?
Yeah, and that's fuel for fire for Ace, I'm sure. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah.
He'd probably be making this comments. Oh, he's supposedly sober, but he's selling liquor. That's it. Just there's no reason for it. So.
And let me just be very clear. It's not like I'm anti-alcohol or anti-drug or anything. I
might be anti-cold gin, but I'm not anti-alcohol.
Right. I've lived my life and my lifestyle. I've always said this. I'm not a big drinker. Despite what everybody might think, because you're a musician, I've never touched a drug in my life.
Yep.
And that's my choice. And the reason why that is, you look at how much stuff I have in my house, guitars, bass. I always said if I ever tried drugs,
well, you can't afford drugs.
Well, no, if I did, I'd probably be dead because I do everything in excess. You know what I mean?
True.
So that's why I knew this is probably not a good road for me to go down. But that's a personal
because
choice.
People have to know, as we're watching and recording this, that's just a little tip of your musical instrument collection. Right. It looks like there's like 10 or 12 guitars in the background there, between hanging on the wall and in the cases on the floor. You've got an entire room upstairs of snare drums. I keep saying, and one of these times we're going to do this, we have to do an episode. It could only be a half-hour episode. It doesn't matter. Of all the instruments in your house.
Yeah. I'm 20. I have about around 50 guitars in this room right now, I think.
In that room.
Yes.
In that room. That is not the only room in the house with musical instruments. In that room. If you go up those stairs behind you, did you bring them all down? No, I didn't.
Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is, and if you ever see your videos, if the people watch back, you could look over here, how sometimes, like, now it's extending out this way. But
yes, I did notice.
To the further left there, there's around 2, 4, 6. There's around 9 guitars there. And normally, there's mostly all basses in here. Mm-hmm. But because of this new project I'm in, and I'm playing, some rhythm guitar and stuff like that, I've been really getting up on my craft and playing more guitar lately. Yep. So of course I'm feeding the monster with that. So, hey, it's I good.
No, I was gonna say that almost feels like a good time to just also plug, since we're talking about our look back of 2022. So I guess it was back in March. I went to see Ace Frehley, and I was back and forth. Am I going to go? Am I not going to go? And it turned out, in some ways, at least for you, there was a great thing that I went that night, because that led to you in 2022 joining your first Kiss cover band.
Absolutely. Yes, that's right. Yes.
So that was a nice little added thing for you for this year. And I'm sure it's going to continue into next year, right?
Spoiler alert.
Don't give the details yet.
I'm not, but all I'm saying is that the band, you have agreed to have them on, and we will promote something, hopefully very soon, for something that's coming in February. I think they've already started talking about it on Facebook, but I'm not going to say what it is. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to be meeting up with them next week to work on the set for this stuff. And yeah, it's one of those things, again, thank you for that. Getting that, the conduit to this, and you're playing these shows, and all of a sudden you're the God of Thunder, and you're the War Machine, and I'm like, how did this happen? It's just an awesome thing, and especially playing with 3 other guys who are so passionate and just so cool, just such fans and just really cool people you want to hang around and have White Castle with at the end of the night. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It really is an awesome experience to have that whole other thing of being a fan, you know?
And that to me is the cool thing, right? We started this conversation talking about concerts being back, and that was back in March when things were still like finally starting to open up, but things were still like people were unsure. And but getting out and being able to do those things. I ran into Billy at the Ace show. It's I've run into Billy a lot of times at these Kiss events. Had I not gone to the concert that night, I could say with almost 100% certainty you would not be in the Kiss cover band right now. And that's
Absolutely.
the fun of going to, whether it's Creatures Fest. And it's so easy for people online to say, "Oh, that sucked." Peter sang some notes out of tune. Vinnie didn't do what he was supposed to. But when you're there at these events, whether it's the A show, whether it's Creatures Fest, whatever it is, and you're with other like-minded fans and friends, and it goes far than beyond just, hey, I saw Ace in March and he played the same set list I'd seen the last 2 times I saw him, because you see other people, you hang out, you talk, and it ends up being just as much about the experience. I might criticize the night that we went to see The Who and the set list, but you and I went to dinner beforehand. That was just a fun night out. And that's what this is all about.
And to your point, it's little things that I shake my head. When we did go see Peter at the Cutting Room, and you remember we were waiting online and we were waiting for and I walked in and I went, "Oh, look at it's the Chemist." I'm like, what? And oh, it's the new Gene or whatever. Like they recognize you. I mean, you feel like you're a part of something that's like incredible. Like again. We always talk about when we were younger, do we ever think we'd have the opportunity to this and that, I mean, this stuff, and to be amongst your fans and the conversations we're having on the lines, talking about concerts we went to, this experience.
Yep.
Even it's not always Kiss related. It's just that camaraderie you have with your brethren. You know what I mean?
It's absolutely.
It's an awesome thing.
It is. And I'm glad you said it doesn't have to be Kiss related, because we spend a lot of time talking about Kiss on the show. I started talking about, some of the concerts I've been at during this year. And like I said, when I went back and I watched that, what do we hope for in 2022? It was interesting that at that time, David Lee Roth had just announced that he was canceling his Vegas run.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he also, just like Kiss, never rescheduled those shows. We've spoken about seeing David Lee Roth open for Kiss back in 2020, right before the whole world changed. Do you think we've seen the last of David Lee Roth? I know this year he released a couple of things on YouTube where he like re-recorded some Van Halen songs, which I think was done a while back, but he released them finally this year. But do you think we've seen the last of David Lee Roth?
I don't know, because you heard rumors of there might have been some health issues, and then was there not? Right. I'm going to lean towards no. I don't think it's the last we've heard. Hopefully his health is fine. Yep. But I'm always rooting for our favorite artists to still keep doing well and putting stuff out and hearing new things. I know at certain times, we hear some people singing live now and like, maybe I'd rather not hear them that way, but for the most part, I'm always rooting for people who we've supported all these years.
Yeah, agreed. And to that point, to me, it was cool that this year Ozzy did return to very small performances. I think he did 2 different ones. One was at like a football game or something like that, and the vocals were pre-recorded. Especially an event like that, I don't really give a rat's ass if the vocals were pre-recorded. You're at a football game, they're wheeling out a stage, you're performing for 5 minutes, they're wheeling it off. He performed, Tony Iommi was there. I didn't think we'd ever see Ozzy again on a stage, even for something as small as what he did. I know he's hoping to still get back on the stage in 23. I'm not sure that I believe it's going to happen. But to me, it was even just cool in 2022. Just Ozzy put out a new album, and it was nice to just see him back on the stage again, even brief little moments like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'll always root for things like that. And to me, these guys are in their mid-70s. Ozzy certainly never took care of himself at all. If you would have told me in 2022 there'd be a chance for him to perform 2 songs in the middle of a sports event or whatever it was, I would have said, no friggin' way. Ozzy's not even going to be alive in 2022, let alone performing on something like that. Right. And I think it was in England, and being so welcomed and so loved. Think back to Ozzy in 81, and who would have ever thought in 22 he would be even performing little things like that and be loved by the general population. It's just
Mm,
incredible what a difference 30 years makes,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention, since we're looking back at the year, unfortunately, we obviously lost a bunch of people during the year, which is always the case as we all get older. Obviously, earlier in the year, we lost Alec John Such from Bon Jovi. Meatloaf was a big one. Olivia Newton-John. More recently, we were not able to do an episode on this, but Christine McVie passed away from Fleetwood Mac, which to me, that was when that happened. I'm like, wow, I actually saw the last Fleetwood Mac concert with that classic era lineup, which nobody knew at that time. It was a few years ago. Nobody knew at that time Lindsey Buckingham was going to be leaving the band shortly after that. But and then of course, obviously from the Foo Fighters, Taylor Hawkins, which there's been a lot, and we'll talk about those tribute concerts just for a moment. But it's kind of sad when you look at this and you say, again, our heroes are not getting any younger, and nobody knew Christine McVie was not doing well and going to pass away. Taylor Hawkins was young, all things considered. It's sad when you look back on the year and you see how many people we start to lose.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of correct you. You said, when you said Meatloaf, big loss. I don't know if you meant big loss because of his size, but every one of them is significant.
Yes, that's true.
You know what I mean? Because they all gave tremendous contributions. You could weigh them all out, but I'm not even going to do that because, everything they did as far as for their contribution to music was significant. Whether it's you're just the bass player in Bon Jovi,
right,
or you're Meatloaf, or you're Olivia Newton-John, or people don't realize, I think, how many hits they had with Christine McVie. And you always think of Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, but look at the split of the hits. It's pretty damn close.
It is, absolutely.
So yeah, unfortunately, as we do this and we move forward, we don't know. It's not 2023 yet, but we're gonna have that again, and that's part of growing old. And something you said early, a little while ago, and when my ADD starts kicking in, there was something I wanted to mention, and something that's significant to me. And this has really nothing to do with any particular band, but it has to do with music itself.
Okay.
And this is what I want to say of why music is so important. Let me see if I can get through this without getting emotional, because I do that often lately. But music,
so emotional, baby.
See, even if I was, you're gonna break. Yeah.
Well, I did that for you just to kind of ease the moment for you a little bit.
But this is why music is so significant to me. Besides what we always talk about, I was thinking as my mind goes off, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been friends with you since we're 5 years old, best friends, right?
Yep.
I don't have any closer friend than you. And I have some other friends in the last 20, 25 years that I've been very close with. However, in the last 5 or 6 years, I'm not going to name full names because I don't want to put their names out there. But in the last 5 or 6 years, there's people like my friend Joe, Matt, Paul, Al. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. Mario. Okay. These are all new people in my life.
Yep.
Really good friends of mine. Really close. And it's all because of music. The single point to why I'm friends and talk to these people, whether it's every day, and it's not just about music, people who genuinely care and love for you, is this great thing that we have, and this gift that we have of life and of music. And I just want to acknowledge a lot of those people who I mentioned, because they've made such a significant a part of my life. And when I needed this or I needed that, or I didn't have this and I didn't have that music, I always say, as long as this product exists and I could put it on the turntable, nobody could ever take this record away. You could hate it, you could love it, you could be somewhere in between, but this will always be here. And it's just a wonderful thing when you just really, they say when you stop and smell the roses, be thankful. Again, we always say, unfortunately, when somebody dies, appreciate this, appreciate that. And that's just my thing about appreciating life and appreciating, like I said, the gift of music and friendship, So I just wanted to just throw that out there because
I'm glad you did. And that's a great point. It goes back to what I was saying before about going to these concerts, going to these expos. And I think of my daughter and myself who, this past summer, I went to 3 My Chemical Romance concerts with her. And I bust her chops all the time. She's a fan of that band. I know it was like a big emo band 20 years ago, but she got into that band from me.
Was Emo one of the characters in the Muppets? Oh
that
no,
was
it's Elmo.
That was Elmo. But the point is, I had My Chemical Romance on my iTunes account or whatever, and she was 10 years old at the time, so it was probably 10, 12 years ago, and she's like, she thought the name sounded dangerous. I'm gonna listen to that. It's My Chemical Romance. That sounds dangerous, and she liked it. And now here it is, 10, 12 years later, her and I taking road trips together, hanging out, father-daughter time, going to a concert, driving 4 hours to Albany, seeing a band, turn around and coming home. And, and I've said this many times, going to see those concerts. First off, they did 3 concerts, 3 totally different set lists each night. That's the way concerts should be. I love that. But having that moment with my family, with my daughter, is priceless. And this, even one of her other favorite bands, Paramore, right? I'd love to tell her I got her into them also because they were opening up for No Doubt, and I downloaded songs to hear what they sounded like, and then she liked them. It became her favorite band. They put out new music 4 or 5 weeks ago, and her and I are texting back and forth. Hey, I heard the new song before you or whatever, and it's cool because like the first single they put out, I responded to her, this is garbage. I can't stand it. It didn't sound like the rock music that I knew from them 15 years ago. Although ironically, and I should say this to you, I think if you listen to the new single, you probably would like it even more than me. It has like an R&B 70s type of feel to it. And I've actually turned around and loved it. But my point being is that it brought my daughter and I, and I'm close with my kids, but it brings us even closer because we have that connection in music. And it doesn't have to be that we like the same music. Like I said, I first texted her, this song is garbage. And she's like, are you kidding? It's great. It's so catchy. And I'm like, I don't hear it. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, by the way, I think that song is actually pretty damn cool. It wasn't rock. So I wasn't expecting that. I don't expect a 70s funk type thing, but I'm like, oh, it's actually cool. And she's like, do you want to come see them in concert with me in the summer, maybe? So that to me is what's great about music, whether it's bonding with your kids, making new friends, whatever it is, that is to me what's great about it. And that's why I love when bands like Kiss are still touring and you go to the shows and you see fathers or mothers and their kids, and now even sometimes the grandkids are there. That to me is so friggin' awesome.
Absolutely.
And I said this, I posted this on Facebook a day or two ago. Just a couple of days ago, David Grohl performed with Billie Eilish, and they did My Hero. And I saw online some people like, this is ridiculous. She doesn't even play guitar. She's not a real artist. And I'm like, who the hell cares? She's very relevant to the 16, 18, 20-year-olds. And if she's on stage with Dave Grohl singing My Hero and some 16 or 18-year-old says, what song is that? I'm going to go try out Foo Fighters. Let me check that out. Oh, that sounds like a good song. What other songs did I have? That's a friggin' win in my book.
Absolutely.
I love that because now maybe some 15-year-old kid who had no clue who the Foo Fighters were could become a Foo Fighters fan because of that. And I just think that's friggin' awesome.
I agree. 1,000%.
That was my rant. You had a rant. That was my rant.
It's a good rant.
Thank you.
It's a good rant. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I did briefly mention before, and I just want to touch on it. You know, obviously we mentioned Taylor Hawkins passing away this year, and they did those tribute concerts. And to me, first off, I think Dave Grohl knocked it out of the park with those tribute concerts. But I want to definitely acknowledge one of the things I loved about it is that I feel like in some ways we finally got a tribute to Eddie Van Halen also, who passed away a couple of years ago. And Wolf got up on stage and he did Panama and he did Hot for Teacher, I think it was. And he said he would never play Van Halen songs, but this was the appropriate time. And you know, the lead singer from The Darkness, who I love his podcast. I told you about that the other day. I love his podcast, but I just think Wolf freaking hit a home run with that. And when I think back to 2022, in some ways to me, that's one of the highlights of the year, that we finally got a proper tribute, albeit at a Taylor Hawkins tribute concert, but at least we finally got a proper tribute to Eddie Van Halen in my mind. What did you think?
Well, and I think it was needed, you know. I know this has been very kind of, you know, what's the word? Careful or considerate to when he was going to do whatever he was going to do.
Yep.
And, you know, obviously he felt like this was a good time. And, it's never an easy thing to do, I'm sure. I mean, if and especially, you know, when you're talking about this, I just think about, you know, following in Eddie Van Halen's footsteps, even if you're his son, like how difficult that must be.
Sure.
because quite honestly, you're never going to achieve. I hate to say it, it's nothing against the kid, but how could you ever surpass what his dad did? There's not many people who ever will to fill those shoes.
Right.
It's
Well,
just
first off, to reach that level that Eddie Van Halen and Van Halen reached is nearly impossible for anybody, let alone his son, right?
Exactly.
So you're already starting off with a comparison. It's not like Van Halen was like a bar band or a club band for 20 years with moderate success. I mean, they were one of the biggest bands ever. So that's already an unfair comparison for his kid. And, then how many times will a kid of such a major star like that actually equal or surpass their parents? It just it's unheard of. It's unfair. But I love that he's trying to be his own person, do his own music, not live on the coattails of Van Halen. Of course, he's got the name, so that gets him a foot in the door. But if he doesn't have the material long term, it's not going to last. And I do think he's going to last. I do. I'm not saying he's going to be at Van Halen level, but I do think he's going to last.
I mean, there's a whole other, could go on for a whole other, conversation, because I just think you're also at an unfair advantage with the way the music industry is, or whatever it is, It's just, to me, it's not catered anymore to that kind of music. It's more, again, go listen to Spotify. I know every once in a while I see people do their top 10, and I listen to the songs. And again, I don't want to bash anything or whatever, but it's far different than it used to be,
absolutely.
And so, again, I'm glad we had our moments in the sun in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s or whatever, when we were buying a lot of music, and bands like the Foo Fighters were new, or Green Day, or Nirvana, or Prince, or Madonna. I didn't mean that to rhyme, but that actually sounded pretty good. Yeah.
You did that like a songwriter.
I did. Maybe I'll be one someday.
Comes natural, right?
Yeah.
Mere bag of shells.
Mere bag of shells. But there is so much advantage because of social media and YouTube and stuff like that. But the pool that you're in, man, you and I were talking about it the other day, about releasing music and doing stuff like that. It's there are so many immensely talented people out there that even if they have pretty damn successful YouTube channels, you don't hear them still out of the top 10 of Spotify. You know what I mean? Whether they're a guitar player, singer, whatever. So, but at least you do get recognized. There is, and I was telling you about that. I just, you want to get recognized for something. You know what I mean? For what your hard work. So you do have that, but it's just a totally different business now.
It really is, and I could only think of, what was it, a few weeks ago, Quiet Riot released the new single with Kevin DeBro on it for the first time in like 20 years. And I know the feedback was phenomenal, and the song actually is excellent. But I almost feel like, is it here today, gone before I go to bed tonight? Because there's just so much that we're always being hit with. And this was, a known singer and a known band with a song that got very good feedback. And I wonder 6 months from now how much people will even remember that song exists.
Probably not.
Which is a shame. Which is a shame, because to me, I mean, I listened to it a few times. It's a great song, but that's somebody who has an established name, passed away. So there was that element of it. Obviously included their drummer as well, Frankie Manali, passed away. The video was absolutely incredible. If something like that can't be sustained and, watched a year, 2, 3 down the road, then how do these artists who are just starting? It's almost like an unfair situation.
It really is. It really is. It really is.
And I'm not saying that Quiet Riot should have sold 1 million copies and it should have been all over the radio. But my point just being, will that be forgotten? Because I think that was a great, great song, great video they put out this year. But will it be forgotten in 6 months? I'm afraid the answer might be yes.
Yeah.
Which is sad. Which is very sad. One other thing I just want to mention before I finally let you go here. But you did say you wanted to do this tonight. Obviously, we were talking about people who passed, and luckily this person did not pass. But there was also the big news later in the year, this year, about Mick Mars leaving Motley Crue and being replaced with John 5, right? So I'm sure when we talk about our 2023 wish list and all of that, I will talk about the fact that I'm going to be at that first Motley Crue show with John 5. So I'll definitely share my experiences from that evening. But what were your thoughts when you heard Mick Mars was leaving Motley Crue?
Well, I thought it was inevitable. We even know he's had this condition for years. And I was surprised with the hiatus of them not playing. He was even able to come back and physically do it, because supposedly it's extremely painful. but you'll have people who will criticize the band. Oh, they shouldn't go on if they don't have, to me, that's nonsense. If it's something that he's in favor of, and you could get somebody who's really good and a good fit for the band.
Yep.
Again, for what we're saying, new music, or at least for the stuff that we like, we're not hearing the Motley Crue or that anymore. You know what I mean? Or at least not in the mainstream. I know this stuff exists,
Yep.
but like you say, it comes and goes. It doesn't
really
sustain anymore. It's
No.
a shame.
It really is.
So I'm all in favor of that, man. Like Motley Crue is one of the rare bands that like all original members.
True.
Most bands, Def Leppard. I mean, look at Def Leppard, for God's sakes.
That's very true.
There's a lot of bands that had at least one replacement member, not two.
Yeah. Very, very
so
true.
I think that's totally cool.
Yeah. No, to me, I think it's interesting that John Corabi, who obviously people know was in Motley Crue for a little bit of time, and people may or may not know, Mick Mars was recording a solo album before Motley Crue reunited, and Corabi at least recorded some of the songs with Mick Mars on there. But Corabi's been saying lately that he doesn't believe that Mick Mars actually quit. He thinks he was pushed out by the band. And he also said he doesn't think Mick Mars recorded any of the music with the band since 95. Mm-hmm. Don't know if there's any truth to that. Mm-hmm. I actually hope Corabi's wrong in this case. I hope it's, look, I don't want to hope that it's his health and that's why he left. That's a horrible thing to say.
Right.
But, Motley Crue had retired, and we know what those things are like. Then they came back, and I just hope that, Mick Mars didn't leave because relationships got that horrible on his side, right? Because he was there from day one. He was there until the end in 2015. And, for some people, his legacy may be tainted if he's not there on these shows starting next year. I don't want to say I hope it's health, because obviously I don't hope it's health at all. Mm-hmm. But I just hate to think that behind the scenes they were pushing him out for other reasons. That's just, I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, and I can't even comment really on that because I have no inside knowledge of that.
Of course,
my only thing I would say is, why bring him back at the start? Is just sever it right there and make some sort of reason. That's the only thing that I'm like, why that? I don't know if I believe that, but
I hope he's wrong. He's wrong. So we'll see. Before we wrap up here, I started off by saying how I did, 60 or so episodes this year. I just, I'll say I was very fortunate this year to have a bunch of great guests on during the year, whether it was, Rock and Roll Hall of Famers like Glenn Hughes was on the show. I had Billy Sheehan on, Orianthi, Michael Sweet, Michael Monroe, Mark Tremonti again was on. Just recently I had Rachel Bolan, Mark Ferrari. I just want to, close by thanking all the guests that come on the show. And, some of them, it's amazing to me, reach out to me to be on the show. A lot of them come through, publicity teams and their record labels and all of that. And I'm never losing sight of how blessed I am to be doing this and doing this now for close to 3 years. I started like 6 months before the pandemic began. And, you were always one of my biggest champions saying, of course you can do this. Of course. And I'm like, no, we're going to do 3 episodes. And this goes back to 2014, I think, when you and I were driving to Indianapolis Kiss Expo. And again, it goes back to going out and doing things at, some of these events. And we were driving in the car and we were ranking Kiss songs 0 to 10 and, giving it a review of Boo Boo Boo. Mm. And you were like, we should do a podcast. And I was scared, man. And it took me years to do it because I was like, I just don't want to do a podcast like everybody else does to only talk about Kiss because there's so many of them and they do it good and I'm never going to do it better. And I tried to find my niche and I honestly, I'll say this, Mitch LaFon was probably a big influence. I saw how he went from 3 sides to interviewing all these people. I'm like, all right, maybe I could do it. And, but I'd want to just close the year by thanking you because you always pushed me to do this from back in 2014. And now I'm at over 220 something episodes, I think, and all these different guests and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is on and, all these great musicians on. And we get to do this sometimes. And it's never lost on me that probably I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you pushing me for years. So I will close the year by thanking my buddy. I know we always joke and have fun on this, but serious moment, I could never probably have done this without your support and help. So thank you, my friend.
Well, I've been telling you, and I've always told you, I think you're a natural. at what you do. It's very difficult what you do. I watch your body language. I watch your ease of speech. I watch how you're just. Yeah, I know you go in, you do your preparation, which a lot of the guests appreciate that they comment. Oh, you did your research. That's a common thing you hear. Your personality comes through. There's a reason why people are comfortable speaking to you and telling you. You also have taken a kind of an approach that you're not a basher. You're not going to do. You have your, you stay within your bounds, and that's what makes people comfortable and want to be on your show. So kudos to you. You could give me the credit for helping you out, but ultimately you're doing the work. And I know every time we have conversation on the phone, I'll say, "Hey, you got anything coming up?" I don't know how much longer I want to do this. I'm like thinking, all right, he's just.
well, I say that because, that. Look, I changed jobs this year for the first time in 22 years. Mm-hmm. My son went away to college. My daughter graduated college and started a job, and she's talking about, maybe in the next year moving out. I've had a lot of change in my personal life. So I'm like, well, do I have the time to do a podcast and do it right? And to me, and you said this, I'm not the type of person to come on these shows and bash people. Music's about having fun and celebrating life and, enjoying all of that. Doesn't mean I love everything, but I don't have to be here and say, this one sucks, that one sucks. Look, some of my musical guests, I'm not fans of their music, but it doesn't matter. They've still accomplished more than 99.999% of the people who try it in this industry. And if you can't respect that, then you probably, in my mind, shouldn't be doing a show like this. That's just the way I feel.
Well, look, as long as you love what you do, and I think you do love doing this, you do it at the comfort of your own home. You're not having to go in any studio. You literally go down into your furnished basement and you're able to have these relationships with you. That's why I never think you're going to just say, I'm not going to do this anymore, because I think it's certainly, and we all have parts of our lives that we go through difficult things, and it's always a welcome distraction, when you're going through a rough part or something like that you could focus on, even if it's for the half hour or the hour. It gives you some joy and fills you here. So that's why I always think that you're going to keep doing this. And I just think every year you've gotten stronger, and I think, I think more that you do this, the bigger the guests you get, the more repeat guests you're going to have. And so that's why I think it's phooey every time. Yes, phooey. Every time you say, I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore.
And to that point, I already am in conversations with a couple of guests to appear in January. So, so there's already some of those conversations going on. So I don't think there's an end in sight. I say that sometimes because I feel there's a lot going on in life, and I don't want to disappoint and put out a subpar product. But you've always pushed me from day -1 through now. And, I wanted to close by thanking the guests that I've had on this year. And there's been lots of them, but especially thanking you for always being my right-hand guy and supporting everything I've done. And thank you, my friend.
Well, I could say the same. And I know you yell at me for a lot of the stuff that I do and don't do. So hopefully 2023 we'll have some plans to. I don't need to go into some of those details of my own thing.
Yeah, we're gonna do a 2023 wish list, and don't be surprised if my number one thing is that you increase your social media presence. So, but that's a whole nother episode.
I thought you were going to say you were going to do a 2023 roast on me.
Well, it might turn into a 2023 roast.
All of a sudden, I see all these Zoom windows pop up with all these people. I'm like, oh no.
Oh man, I'm trying to think. What do they have when somebody's an alcoholic or a drug addict? Intervention, right? Yeah. I'm gonna have an intervention with you.
No, it's gonna be this is what it's gonna be called, a vintervention.
A vintervention. A vintervention. Well, on that note, buddy, it's been a great 2022. Again, thank you for always doing these. Thank you to all the guests that have been on. To everybody who's watching the show, thank you all. I always appreciate the comments, even the people who say, you should have asked this question, that question. I always appreciate just that you're even watching. It means a lot to me. And, I'm going to ask everybody who's watching this, what are some of your favorite moments looking back at 2022? What are their favorite albums, concerts, events, whatever it was? Is there something that sticks out to you? Was there somebody, like I started off saying, I kind of refound Pat Benatar, 2022, even though I had her catalog? Was there somebody that maybe you refound during the year is there a new band that maybe you got into that if you leave in the comments, I could be like, hey, let me go check that out. I mentioned before My Chemical Romance and Paramore that are newer bands that I listen to with my daughter. They're both 20 years old, so they're not really new anymore. So is there new music that you guys listen to? Whatever it is, put it in the comments. I'm really curious to what you have to say. And again, thank you, everybody. It's been a great year. Thank you. Yeah. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to everybody. And we will see you on the other side in 2023. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Alrighty, there you have it. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody who's watching my YouTube channel, subscribing, following my Facebook page, following me on Twitter, following me on Instagram, wherever it is you follow me. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you guys continue to enjoy the content that I put out in 2023. I know it's going to be a blast. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Happy New Year, everybody. See you next time.